freeze. Now shatter. Clean up with style. Then repeat till satisfied. It is recommended to use Marksman's Dodge, as we can use it to reload our last word when we trigger our Lucky Pants buff. However, unlike some of our other Cowpoke builds, we will be using a different ability to reload. Withering Blade paired with Whisper of Impetus will reload our weapons, grant us 40 points of handling, and boost our resilience by 10 points. Whisper of Impetus states that it will reload your stowed weapons, but it actually reloads all of them. Our Withering Blade shurikens apply 60 slow each for 3.5 seconds, so throwing both at a target will freeze them. Throwing both at an unstoppable champion and then shattering them will stun them, and you can throw one of them to apply slow on an overload champion to stun them. Grim Harvest grants us a stasis shard when we defeat slowed or frozen enemies. Rank and file enemies create a small shard that grants us 10% melee energy when picked up. Elites, mini-bosses, bosses, and guardians create large shards that will grant us 50%. Copies of these shards are also spawned for our allies. We will be running Glacier Grenade paired with Touch of Winter, Whisper of Shards, and Whisper of Fissures. Glacier Grenade usually creates a wall of 5 stasis crystals. With Touch of Winter, it will instead create a hexagon of 6 crystals. When we shatter these crystals, Whisper of Shards will boost our grenade regeneration by 500% for 6 seconds. Shattering another crystal will extend the buff's duration up to 11 seconds. We can be strategic with these crystal shatters by shattering some of them to wipe out a group of enemies and spacing out the remaining shatters to maintain this buff until we get our grenade back. Whisper of Fissures will make our grenade more powerful by boosting our shatter damage by 12.5% at the source of the burst, while also increasing the size of the burst to extend out to 10 meters. Unlike Whisper of Shards, Whisper of Fissures can be triggered by shattering stasis crystals and frozen enemies. Whisper of Hedrons grants a plethora of benefits for 11 seconds after we freeze an enemy. Hedrons will boost our stability by 30 points, our aim assist by 15, and our airborne effectiveness by 20, but we are running it because it also boosts our mobility, resilience, and recovery by 60 points each, enabling us to focus heavily on discipline and intellect when we get to our armor stats. Whisper of Conduction causes stasis shards within 15 meters to track to our position. However, this was chosen as a stat stick that grants 10 points to our resilience and intellect. If you don't require the stat boosts, or aren't as lazy as me and don't mind running around to grab your shards, then you can swap this one out. Some great options if you want to boost survivability would be Whisper of Chains for 40% damage resistance when standing next to your stasis crystals or frozen enemies. Whisper of Rhyme, so your stasis shards grant you a stasis overshield with up to 50 HP that lasts for 10 seconds, or you can choose to boost your damage with primary weapons against stasis crystals and frozen enemies by using Whisper of Rending. This means boosting the damage of our last word hand cannon. Rending results in a 42.5% damage increase against frozen targets. As you become comfortable with the build in its initial form, this is arguably the best option for replacing Whisper of Conduction. Our Lucky Pants are fitted with an illegally modded holster. Upon readying a hand cannon, this holster will grant plus 100 handling to ready speed, which means we will have the fastest hands in the system. The holster will also reduce our accuracy cone size by 30%, which is a fancy way of saying it reduces bloom. Or, in other words, our bullets will have a tighter grouping, allowing us to have an easier time landing our shots. When we ready a fully loaded kinetic hand cannon, or one of an element matching our subclass, each hit we land within 5.5 seconds will increase our weapon damage by an additive 60%. This buff ramps up to a maximum boost of 600% after landing 10 shots. When the buff runs out, or if we swap weapons, then we will have to wait 10 seconds before we can trigger this effect again. There are a lot of great hand cannons to combine with our Lucky Pants, but none of them will give you a stronger YEEHAW than the last word. This 225 RPM kinetic beauty is at its finest when fired from the hip. Hip-fired hits will grant us stacks of fanfire. Each stack will grant us +5 reload speed and further increase our accuracy. You can obtain up to 4 stacks of fanfire, but all stacks are lost upon reloading or aiming down sights. All hip-fired precision hits with this weapon deal 30% more damage. For legendary special weapons, we will run our incandescent weapon of choice. For me, this was an adept mindbender's ambition with incandescent and threat detector. For the heavy slot, I wanted to stick with a fire and ice theme, so I ran a cold comfort with chill clip and envious assassin because kills from my other weapons would load it with up to 3 rockets. My second weapon choice was the slammer with cold steel and chain reaction. For our armor stats, we want to prioritize resilience for the 30% damage resistance, then discipline because we will be spamming our grenades as often as we can, then get intellect as high as possible. For mobility and recovery, we only need 40 points because we will get 60 points from Whisper of Hedrons when we freeze enemies. If you are uncomfortable with the survivability in this setup, then you can shift points over from intellect into recovery. On our helmet, we have 2 kinetic siphons, so our last word will print juiced up orbs that give 3.25% super energy instead of 2.5%. Then we have 1 ashes to assets for some super energy from the crystal shatters from our glacier grenade because they still count as grenade kills. On our arms, we have 1 momentum transfer, so our grenade will give our melee 12% energy, and 1 impact induction so that our melee will do the same for our grenade. Then 1 heavy-handed, so our withering blade kills create an orb. On our chest, we have 2 charged up mods, so we can have up to 5 stacks of armor charge. This enables us to have armor charge for up to 50 seconds. On our legs, we have 3 kinetic surge mods to go all in on boosting the damage of our last word by 22%. If you would prefer to boost your survivability a bit, you can swap one of these out for recuperation or better already. On our class item, we have 1 bomber, so when we dodge, we receive 12% energy for our grenade. Then 1 powerful attraction, so our dodge will grab any orbs within 12.5 meters. And 1 reaper, so our next weapon kill after dodging will create an orb. When entering combat, start by throwing your glacier grenade into the middle of the largest group you can. Then, use your last word or special weapon to shatter 2 or 3 of the crystals to eliminate all or most of the enemies frozen by our grenade, as well as non-frozen enemies who strayed too close to their frozen brethren. Now, use your last word or special weapon to clean up what remains. Keep in mind that our withering blades reload our weapons, so when you empty one weapon, you can swap to the other, empty that weapon, and then throw your shuriken to slow enemies and continue firing with hardly a hiccup. While clearing ads, be sure to periodically shatter another crystal to extend the buff to our grenade regen from Whisper of Shards. Doing so will ensure you have your next grenade ready in 15 seconds or less, depending on how much you are using your dodge and melee. For boss phases, make sure your last word is loaded and ready, then begin by casting your super for passive damage on the boss. Casting Silence and Squall will count as a weapon swap to our Lucky Pants. Now, start unloading the last word into the boss. If you chose to keep Marksman's Dodge, then use that to reload the last word and then continue damaging the boss. If you time everything perfectly, then you will have enough time to fire off all 16 rounds. If you are landing all of your shots, then the last 6 shots will be dealing 600% more damage each. If they are precision hits, then they get a 30% boost from the last word, bringing the total boost up to 780%. Furthermore, with the 22% from our 3 kinetic surge mods, the total comes up to 952%. Once you empty your second mag, switch to your heavy and empty all available shots. Then switch to your special weapon and use it to damage the boss until the luck runs out debuff expires. Then use your withering blades to reload all your weapons. Now switch back to your last word to repeat the loop until the damage phase is over or the boss is dead. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, y'all.